Welcome to our deep dive today. We are going to be exploring kind of a doctor's really unique perspective on modern lifestyle choices and how they impact our health.
Hmm.
And they work in an ICU.
Oh, wow.
So you can imagine they've witnessed firsthand the consequences of some of these choices.
Yeah.
We're diving into excerpts from their writing. It's called Y esto es importantísimo y tú lo sabes.txt.
Good.
Which translates to, and this is extremely important, and you know it.
Wow.
Pretty powerful title, right?
It is, yeah. It sets the tone for, a lot of the doctor's observations,
Right.
especially like their central question, which is, are those with more resources and access to healthy options actually making worse choices?
Yeah, it's a question that makes you stop and think for a second. And the doctor describes a really stark difference between their patients from lower and higher socioeconomic backgrounds.
Yeah.
And
The differences in their dietary habits are so striking.
yeah. For example, the doctor describes seeing lower income patients who often rely on traditional diets, high in carbohydrates.
Mm-hmm.
They give this example. Morjadelas fritas con llame, yuca, papa frita con un jugo de azúcar.
Oh, wow.
Basically, it's like fried bologna with starchy root vegetables and a sugary juice,
Okay. Yeah.
which sounds really unhealthy at first glance.
Right.
Right.
What's important here is that these meals are made from whole foods,
Oh,
often prepared at home.
gotcha.
And while they are high in carbohydrates, they lack the processed ingredients and added sugars that are so prevalent in, modern diets.
Okay, that makes sense. So on the other hand, the doctor describes their higher income patients kind of indulging in, I'll just read the quote, ultraprocesados todo el tiempo y papas fritas y hamburguesas viendo un televisor HD Netflix.
Okay.
So basically, it's like a steady diet of ultra-processed foods, fries, and burgers while watching Netflix on a high-def TV.
It paints a pretty clear picture, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. The contrast is striking. So, even though they have access to healthier options, they're choosing this path, which often leads to developing metabolic diseases.
Right.
So what are metabolic diseases exactly?
Yeah. So metabolic diseases are a group of conditions that affect your metabolism,
Okay.
which is essentially how your body uses energy.
Gotcha.
So think like type 2 diabetes, heart disease, stroke, and even some types of cancer.
Wow.
These diseases they're becoming like the leading cause of death globally.
Yeah, it feels like we hear that term all the time now, metabolic disease.
Yeah, and lifestyle choices play a significant role in their development.
And the doctor really drives home the seriousness of this by sharing this chilling quote from the World Health Organization. They say, mejor tener if que diabetes es más económico para el sistema y la gente vive con más calidad de vida. Which translates to, it's better to have HIV than diabetes, it's cheaper for the system, and people live with a better quality of life.
Yeah, that's a pretty shocking statement.
It is.
But it does reflect kind of a harsh reality.
Right.
While HIV can now be effectively managed with medication, metabolic diseases often require significant lifestyle changes that many people struggle to maintain.
Right.
And the long-term consequences can be really devastating, impacting not only like physical health, but also mental well-being and quality of life.
Yeah, for sure. And the doctor actually uses this term, the disease of the mouth.
The disease of the mouth.
Yeah.
What does that even mean?
Well, they're referring to the overwhelming availability and appeal of highly palatable foods that are engineered to kind of trigger our reward systems, making us crave more, regardless of our nutritional needs.
So they're designed to be irresistible.
Right. These foods are everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's like we're constantly being bombarded with temptation, making it much harder to resist these unhealthy choices.
Right. So how do we break free from this disease of the mouth? It sounds intense.
Yeah, it does. And the doctor seems to emphasize this importance of personal responsibility.
Okay, but personal responsibility. That sounds, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not just about willpower, is it?
Well, they acknowledge that it's not just about willpower.
Okay.
It's about understanding the complex interplay of our biology, our psychology, and our environment.
Yeah, our surroundings definitely have an impact.
Right.
It's not all on us.
Right. And in fact, the doctor even admits to struggling with unhealthy cravings themselves.
Oh, real?
So they're acknowledging that this is a universal challenge.
Okay, so if we're all kind of wired to crave these tempting foods, then how do we actually make healthier choices? It feels like we're fighting against our own biology.
It's a good question, and I think that's what we'll dig into next.
Okay, yeah, let's get into that.
So if we're wired to crave these tempting foods, how do we make healthier choices. It feels like we're fighting against our own biology.
It's definitely a challenge. And I think this is where the doctor's observations about socioeconomic disparities become really insightful. They point to the fact that personal responsibility doesn't exist in a vacuum.
Right.
Our environment plays a huge role.
It's like we're surrounded by a system that's almost designed to make us sick.
Exactly.
Right.
If you think about the doctor's examples, the lower-income patients eating mostly whole foods despite a high carbohydrate intake versus the higher-income patients with access to healthy options, but choosing processed foods, you start to see a pattern.
It's almost like those with more resources are more susceptible to the disease of the mouth because they're exposed to more temptation. They can afford to indulge in those cravings more frequently.
Precisely. And let's not forget the power of marketing.
Mhm.
Highly processed foods are often heavily advertised.
Oh, yeah.
And those ads are incredibly effective at triggering those cravings we were talking about. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry designed to make us want more, regardless of the consequences.
And for people struggling financially, those cheap, calorie-dense foods are often the most accessible option.
Right.
They might not have the time or resources to cook elaborate meals from scratch. And let's be honest, fresh produce can be expensive.
You're absolutely right. It's not just about willpower. It's about access and affordability. When you're constantly stressed about making ends meet, healthy eating can feel like a luxury.
Yeah.
And reaching for comfort food can become a coping mechanism.
So it sounds like we're dealing with a perfect storm of biological urges, clever marketing, and socioeconomic pressures, all pushing us towards unhealthy choices. It's pretty daunting, to be honest. Where do we even begin to address this?
Well, I think the doctor's straightforward language offers a starting point.
Okay.
They use the word porqueria to describe these unhealthy foods.
Porqueria.
Yeah, which roughly translates to junk or garbage. It's a blunt term,
Right.
but it gets the point across.
It's like they're saying, wake up, this stuff is literally clogging your system.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And while completely eliminating all processed foods might not be realistic, for everyone, becoming more conscious of what we're consuming is a crucial first step.
So ditching the porqueria is a good starting point. But how do we navigate a world that's literally saturated with this stuff?
Becoming a savvy consumer is essential. It's about reading labels, understanding what those long ingredient lists actually mean, and making informed choices.
I used to think reading labels was just about counting calories.
Right.
But it's so much more than that. It's about understanding what you're putting into your body
Yeah.
and making choices that align with your health goals.
And it's not about deprivation or following some restrictive diet.
Right.
The doctor acknowledges that even they enjoy unhealthy foods occasionally. It's about finding a balance that works for you.
So it's not about being perfect. It's about being mindful.
Precisely. It's about paying attention to how your body feels when you eat certain foods.
Yeah.
Noticing your energy levels and making adjustments based on what you learn. It's about listening to your body's signals.
And while we're talking about mindful choices, we can't forget about the role of physical activity. The doctor doesn't explicitly mention exercise in their writing, but it's clearly an important piece of the puzzle.
Absolutely. And I think it ties in nicely with the doctor's observations about pleasure and comfort.
Okay.
We often associate unhealthy habits with immediate gratification, while healthy choices can feel like a chore.
Right.
But exercise doesn't have to be a punishment.
I think that's a really important point. It's about finding activities that bring you joy,
Yeah.
whether it's dancing, hiking, swimming, or simply going for walks in nature.
Exactly. It's about reframing exercise as a source of pleasure and stress relief, not just a means to an end. And the same goes for healthy eating.
Right.
It shouldn't feel like a punishment. It should be about nourishing your body with delicious, wholesome foods that make you feel good.
I love that idea, reframing healthy choices as acts of self-care rather than sacrifices. But let's be realistic, it's still easier said than done. We're constantly bombarded with messages that equate indulgence with happiness.
You're right. And that's where the power of community comes in. Surrounding yourself with people who support your healthy choices can make a huge difference.
It's about finding your tribe, people who share your values and encourage you to stay on track. I know for me, having a workout buddy makes it so much easier to stay motivated.
Absolutely. And it's not just about exercise. It's about creating a support system that encourages healthy choices in all areas of your life.
So we've talked a lot about personal responsibility and the importance of, mindful choices. But as we've seen, there are these larger forces at play here that make healthy living a real uphill battle for a lot of people. So where do we go from here? How do we create a world that makes healthy choices easier and more accessible for everyone?
Yeah, that's the crucial question. And the doctor's writing, it hints at some solutions, but they go beyond, individual actions. It's about they touch on the need for systemic change,
Yeah.
tackling the environmental and societal factors that contribute to this whole global health crisis.
Yeah. One thing that really struck me was the doctor's comment about, the culture of excess. It feels like we're constantly bombarded with messages that to tell us we need more, more, more food, more stuff, more entertainment. And it's all designed to like make us feel dissatisfied with what we have.
That's a really insightful observation. It's like we've lost sight of like the simple pleasures in life, like enjoying a home-cooked meal with
Hmm.
with loved ones, moving our bodies in nature, connecting with our communities. We've been conditioned to seek fulfillment through consumption rather than through meaningful experiences.
Yeah, and the marketing industry plays a huge role in perpetuating this culture of excess. I mean,
Right.
think about how much money is spent on advertising unhealthy foods, especially like to children.
Oh, absolutely.
It's no wonder we're facing like an epidemic of metabolic diseases.
Yeah, the food industry has mastered the art of triggering our reward systems,
Yeah. Mm.
making us crave those highly processed, sugar-laden products even when we know they're harmful.
Mm.
And for those living in food deserts, where fresh produce is scarce and fast food chains are abundant, resisting those temptations becomes even harder.
So we have this like complex interplay of, biological urges, aggressive marketing, and socioeconomic inequalities, all contributing to this problem. It can feel really overwhelming, like we're up against a giant unstoppable machine. So what can we do? Do we just like throw up our hands and say, it's too big, we can't fight it?
I don't think so. I think the doctor's perspective offers a glimmer of hope. They talk about the need for education, for
Hmm.
empowering people with the knowledge to make informed choices. And they also hint at the power of collective action, of changing the systems that make unhealthy choices the default.
So it's a two-pronged approach, empowering individuals and transforming the environment.
Exactly. On an individual level, we can start by becoming more conscious consumers, reading labels, choosing whole foods whenever possible, cooking at home more often. These are small but significant steps we can all take. And we can also vote with our wallets, supporting businesses that prioritize health and sustainability.
And I think it's important to remember that healthy living doesn't have to be about deprivation or like strict rules. It's about finding joy in nourishing our bodies, moving in ways that feel good, and connecting with others who share our values.
Absolutely. It's about reframing our relationship with health and wellness, viewing it as a source of pleasure and empowerment rather than a chore or a punishment. And that's where community support can be so crucial. When we surround ourselves with people who encourage and inspire us, making healthy choices becomes easier and more enjoyable.
But as you said, individual action is only part of the solution. We also need to address the larger systems that perpetuate these unhealthy patterns.
Right. We need to advocate for policies that limit the marketing of unhealthy foods to children, make healthy options more affordable and accessible, and create environments that encourage physical activity. We need to demand that our schools serve nutritious meals and that our communities have safe spaces for walking, biking, and playing.
It sounds like a tall order, but I'm sensing a growing momentum behind these ideas. Like
Yeah.
people are starting to wake up to the fact that our health is directly linked to the health of our planet, our communities, and our food systems. There's a growing movement demanding change.
And that's where our collective power lies. As individuals, we can support those movements, vote for leaders who prioritize health and well-being, and advocate for changes in our schools, workplaces, and communities. Every voice, every action contributes to the momentum for a healthier future.
This deep dive has been a real eye-opener. We started by exploring one doctor's observations, and we ended up unraveling this complex web of individual choices, societal pressures, and systemic challenges. It's a lot to process.
It is. It can feel overwhelming at times. But I think the key takeaway is this. We have the power to choose differently, both individually and collectively. We can choose to nourish our bodies with wholesome foods, move our bodies in ways that bring us joy, and advocate for a world that prioritizes health and well-being for all.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with this final thought. What small step can you take today to move towards a healthier future for yourself, your community, and the world around you? It might be choosing a piece of fruit over a processed snack, going for a walk in your neighborhood, or speaking up about the need for healthier options in your community. Every choice, no matter how small, it ripples outwards, creating a wave of change that can transform our world.
It's a journey, not a destination. And every step we take together brings us closer to a healthier, happier, and more sustainable future.